Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. Our channel narrates the life stories of our viewers from all around the world. To protect individuals' privacy, names are sometimes altered in the stories. I am Ivan, born into a large old family in a busy neighborhood of a city. We lived in an old ancestral house that belonged to my grandfather, where 3 families resided together. My family, along with my uncle's family, and my grandmother and grandfather. Since other relatives also lived in the same alley, we often gathered at my grandmother's house. I had 2 older brothers and 3 cousins, and most of the children in our family were boys. I only had 1 girl cousin. This led to strong bonds among us boys. We were friends from childhood, always doing everything together. We even attended the same school, and my grandfather treated all of us equally. My cousins and I were always close, and all 4 of us were very dedicated to our studies. Jack and I were the same age, while 2 of the other cousins were older than us. We often had childish arguments and brief fights. Sometimes we played pranks that caused minor injuries too. For instance, once I pushed my cousin, causing him to fall against a mirror, which broke and cut his hand. Another time, he pushed me and I fell down 2 steps. But none of these incidents were serious. Our fathers would yell, and that would be the end of it. However, one time we quarreled over a new girl who had just moved into our alley. Her name was Helen, and she was a pretty girl whom I wanted to befriend, and so did Jack. Because of this, Jack insisted she liked him, which upset me, and we started fighting. We were hitting each other when suddenly Jack grabbed a wooden chair nearby and swung it toward me, hitting me in the lower abdomen. At that moment, an intense pain surged through my entire body and I screamed. Jack, terrified, dropped the chair and shouted for help. I fainted from the pain, and when I opened my eyes, I was in the hospital. That day, due to my cousin's blow, I lost my manhood, and according to the doctors, I would no longer be able to have children. At that time, I was about 10 years old and didn't fully understand the significance of what had happened. I didn't understand why my mother had a huge argument with my uncle that night or why my grandfather disciplined Jack. Because of that incident, I became sterile and was deprived of certain experiences. For a while, my mother kept her distance from my uncle's family, and there was a gap between us. Because of what happened, Jack and I grew apart. We were no longer as close as before. As I grew older, I continued to be an excellent student, always at the top of my class. But with age, I became increasingly aware of my deficiency, which affected my self-confidence, especially as my brothers got married, and even my oldest cousin was about to marry. But because of my condition, my self-confidence was lower, so I focused entirely on my studies. Throughout high school and my teenage years, I didn't form any relationships with girls. Even though Jack apologized to me many times for what had happened, I always thought that if that incident had not occurred, and Jack hadn't been so angry with me, I could have had a normal life, marriage, and children. But Jack had deprived me of fatherhood, and that's why I could never reconnect with him like before, despite his many attempts. I studied hard and was accepted into medical school. My entire confidence at that point was based on my achievement of getting into medical school. After my acceptance, I wanted to move to a rural area to get away from my family's situation and to be of service to others, as my inability to marry had taken a toll on my mental health. After convincing my family, I moved to a remote village far from the city with a small population. Upon my arrival, the first thing I noticed was the beauty of the village girls. most of whom were fair-skinned with colorful eyes and cheerful faces that naturally attracted people. At first, I didn't want to get close to anyone due to my deficiency, fearing I might fall in love and be unable to marry. About a month into my stay, the villagers, who were hard-working people facing various hardships, expressed immense gratitude toward me for leaving the comforts of the city and enduring the difficulties of the village life to help them. For this reason, I was very popular among the people, and, at least with my presence, they felt less worried about illness. Then one day, a girl named Sarah came to see me with her elderly mother. She was so beautiful that at a single glance I felt drawn to her, my heart trembling. She had colored eyes and full lips. After I asked her about her mother's condition, she began to explain that her father had abandoned them and all she had in the world was her grandmother. She was so beautiful that at a single glance I felt drawn to her, my heart trembling. She had colored eyes and full lips. After I asked her about her mother's condition, she began to explain that her father had abandoned them, and all she had in the world was her grandmother. That day, when I realized the difficult situation Sarah was in, I felt a deep sympathy for her. She had been through so much and was carrying a heavy burden, but I admired her resilience. I decided to help her in any way I could, especially since she seemed to be in need of support. After that, we spent more time talking, and I learned about her strength and determination to take care of her mother. I respected her for not giving up, despite the challenges she faced. Over time, I began to think about how I could support Sarah and others in similar situations more effectively. I recognized that there were many people in the village who needed assistance and care, and I wanted to make a positive impact. I considered various ways to help, whether by offering medical care, emotional support, or helping people find resources to improve their lives. When I returned from a visit to the city, I continued to see Sarah and other villagers at my clinic, focusing on their health and well-being. I worked hard to build trust with the people in the community and earn their respect as a doctor who genuinely cared about their needs. I also thought about how I could create better opportunities for young people in the village, helping them with education, work, and personal growth. It became clear to me that true fulfillment comes from helping others and making a difference in their lives in a positive and supportive way. Since they were afraid of damaging their reputation, and that particular girl was pregnant, I was sure she would remain silent. Once, a young girl came with her mother to my clinic. She was unmarried, but her mother suspected she might no longer be a virgin. Again, when I was alone with that girl, I began to approach her. As my number of patients increased and I became known as a reliable doctor, they began bringing their young daughters to receive a special injection to prevent illness. On the first day, 3 girls came. Although one of them cried and begged me, fearing her reputation would be ruined and she would never be able to marry the boy she loved, I assured them that what I was doing wouldn't harm them, and as long as they didn't tell anyone, no one would find out what had happened in. And so they all kept silent. One day, even 15 girls came to my clinic, and I was very busy that day. This became a habit for me. Some girls even returned the following day, asking me to provide them with the same services as before. They seemed to be satisfied with my work, but this time I reversed the terms, telling them that if they wanted it again, they would need to pay a fee. This statement led one of the younger girls to bring me some gold jewelry. That girl told me that, because of my good looks, many girls were attracted to me, and she was no different from the others. However, she ended up crying and begging me not to tell anyone, as it would ruin her reputation. I, of course, told no one, but she brought me money and gold several times afterward to fulfill her request. Her name was Hannah, a beautiful girl who was about 10 years younger than me and even willing to marry me. Everything was fine until, as usual, a young girl came to receive the injection. She had come alone that day, and as usual, when she entered the room, I tried to start my work. But this time, I had forgotten to lock the door beforehand. So when I approached her, she resisted at first, not letting me to do my job. This was normal to me. All the girls had done the same, but this girl was different. She tried her best to escape, and because the door was open, she easily managed to leave the room. At that very moment when she left the clinic, I realized she would go and tell everyone. I didn't know what to do as the crowd grew. Hannah was among them, standing close by and trying to support me, insisting that nothing inappropriate had happened. Some others who knew me remained quiet, likely due to their personal connections. Still, I realized it would be best for me to leave the village. So, one night I made the decision to leave. As I was preparing to go, Hannah approached me, deeply emotional and hesitant to say goodbye. I tried to persuade her to stay in the village, but she insisted on coming along, saying she felt a strong attachment to me. Despite my efforts to encourage her to stay, she remained resolute. With no other choice, I finally agreed to take her with me to the city, and together we left. When my family met Hannah, they complimented her kindness and beauty. My mother asked how she'd come to travel with me, and I explained that Hannah had chosen to come with me to start a new life in the city. My family was surprised by my sudden decision to leave the village, but given the circumstances, they didn't press too much. After we settled in, Hannah shared that her family situation had been challenging and that she had always hoped for a new beginning. She expressed her genuine feelings, and although I initially hesitated, her sincerity made me feel valued. Gradually, I began to see the possibility of building a life together, based on mutual respect and understanding. With time, our connection grew stronger. After careful consideration, we decided to have a small, simple ceremony to mark the start of our new life together. Here is the translation with the names replaced as requested. I didn't know what to do. The crowd was growing by the minute, and among them I could see Hannah as well as the other girls I had been involved with against their will. Hannah came closer and tried to defend me, but her mother slapped her. Even so, Hannah continued to support me, saying that everything the other girl claimed was a lie, and that the doctor had done nothing wrong to the girls. Some of the other girls were silent, as they were engaged or married, and had brought their children to me for checkups, and because of their reputations, they supported Hannah's words and confirmed them. Still, I knew that if I stayed in that village any longer, eventually I would be caught. So, one night I decided to leave the village. It was midnight when I decided to leave, but Hannah came toward me, holding my hand, crying and begging me not to go, saying she couldn't bear being separated from me. It was strange to me that such a young girl could be so deeply in love with me. I tried to act harshly toward her, hoping she would distance herself from me and lose interest, but Hannah didn't listen. She told me she had been sitting by her front door all day just to see me and come with me if I decided to leave. I couldn't believe that a girl was willing to run away with me, even though she knew everything I had done with the other girls. That night, Hannah had a bag in her hand, ready to escape with me. When I saw that my words meant nothing to her and that she didn't understand my intentions, I gave up and agreed to take her with me to the city, and we escaped together. When my family saw Hannah, they kept complimenting her beauty. My mother asked how I had brought this girl with me, and how her family had allowed her to travel alone with a strange man. I didn't know how to tell my family that, in fact, Hannah had run away with me from the village. So I had to lie and say that both her parents had passed away, which is why she was willing to come with me to the city. Since I had no intention of ever returning to that village, my father was surprised, as I had always said that I wanted to stay in the village for a few years and serve its people. However, due to my mental state, my family didn't ask too many questions. But when I was alone with my mother, she started talking, mentioning how beautiful Hannah was, and how obvious it was that she was much younger than me. I knew where my mother was headed with her questions, so I answered preemptively, telling her that Hannah didn't know yet that I could never have children, and that I would tell her soon. After 2 days of getting to know my family, I asked Hannah why she had run away with me. She said that the first time she saw me, she fell in love with me, as if she had been waiting her whole life for a man like me. She went on to say that her mother had passed away, and the woman who slapped her in front of everyone was actually her stepmother, and because her stepbrothers were harassing her, she had run away. Without letting her finish, I told her that she hadn't really fallen in love with me, but had simply taken the opportunity to escape her family. Hannah began to cry and then told me she truly loved me. In that moment, I felt a warmth take over my entire body, as I had never been the object of such affection from any girl in my life. When Hannah expressed her feelings for me, I doubted her sincerity. That's why I decided to be honest with her and told her that, due to an incident in my past, I could not have children. After I finished, Hannah told me she didn't mind and had only ever wanted to experience true love in her life. And if we were to be together from now on, all she wanted was for me to show her love and attention and always be honest with her. When I saw how much Hannah liked me, I asked her to allow me some time to think. Then, if we decided to stay together, we would go ahead and have a small ceremony and get married. When I thought to myself and realized that Helen was the only girl I could find in my life who would love me so much without thinking about her own desires, I agreed to marry her. At first, my family was unsure whether to accept Helen as a bride or not, because my family came from noble backgrounds, and marriage was a very important matter to them. However, since it was Jack who caused that painful event in my life, I didn't allow anyone to decide for me in this life. I was determined in my choice to marry Helen, and told them that if I didn't marry Helen, I would never accept any other girl as my wife. That's why no one opposed me anymore. Before the wedding, we decided to do some medical tests, and during those tests, I found out that Helen had been pregnant before by someone else. When I asked her about it, Helen, without lying, told me that one of her stepbrothers had forced himself on her. After realizing she was pregnant from him, she had terminated the pregnancy on her own. After hearing this, I trusted Helen because she was honest with me about everything that had happened in her life. We got married shortly after. After the marriage, my family insisted that we stay in the same house, but since I didn't want to be too close to my family, I decided to buy a new house for us. Helen, being a simple village girl, didn't ask for much and came to the house with just a small bag. I bought her some flowers, and with her consent, we started our life together. At first, Helen and I had arguments over different matters because she was much younger than me, and we didn't understand each other very well. But after some time, our relationship improved, and I no longer felt weak, as I had no intentions of becoming a father. Helen told me that her dream was to have a child to take care of, and that was the only thing she wanted from me. I accepted her request, and after going through the legal process, we adopted a child, a girl we named Pariah. After we adopted Pariah, my relationship with my family improved. Even Jack was happy that I was able to get married and find a girl as beautiful as Helen. This is why, after nearly 20 years of distance, Jack and I became close again, just like before. Helen never went back to that village again, and because of the mistakes and harm I had caused to other girls in the past, I decided to repent and occasionally visit charities, offering free checkups. My grandfather was a very sharp man, and after some time he told me that there must have been a reason I suddenly married a village girl and ran away from that village. He said that in every bitter story, there's something behind the scenes that we don't know about. He added that if Jack had never done that thing to me when I was a child, I would never have faced such flaws in my life, and I would have married a different girl. After hearing this, I reflected and came to the conclusion that if someone is meant to be in our fate, no matter what, God arranges our lives in such a way that we meet that person. And if someone is not meant to be part of our destiny, there's no way we could be close to them. Now, after all the painful events that happened in my life and the mistakes I made with other girls, I finally found my way and was able to build a good life with Helen, raising Pariah, a gift from God for me.